Let's dive into the teachings of 1 Corinthians 8. This chapter is all about knowledge, love, and the freedom we have in Christ. Yet it's also a caution to be mindful of how we use that freedom. It's a message that's both relevant and challenging, as it calls us to balance our liberty with love for others, understanding the context. First, let's set the stage. In 1 Corinthians 8, Paul is addressing a specific issue within the church at Corinth: the eating of food sacrificed to idols. This might seem distant from our modern lives, but the principles behind it are timeless. The Corinthians lived in a society where idol worship was common, and meat that had been sacrificed to idols was often sold in the marketplace. The question that arose was whether it was permissible for Christians to eat this meat. Knowledge versus love. Paul begins with a profound statement in verse 1. Now, regarding your question about food that has been offered to idols, yes, we know that we all have knowledge about this issue. But while knowledge makes us feel important, it is love that strengthens the church. Paul acknowledges that knowledge is valuable, but he quickly contrasts it with love, which he elevates as the higher priority. In essence, Paul is saying that knowledge, by itself, can lead to pride, but love builds up others. It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that just because we understand something, we are automatically right or better than others. But Paul reminds us that our actions must be guided by love, not just by what we know to be true. The issue of eating food sacrificed to idols. Moving into verses 4 to 6, Paul explains that there's really no such thing as an idol in the world, and there is only one God. From this perspective, eating food sacrificed to idols is not inherently sinful because the idol itself is nothing. However, Paul doesn't stop there. He recognizes that not everyone possesses this knowledge, and for some, eating such food would violate their conscience. Here's the key point. Even if we know something is technically permissible, we must consider how our actions will affect others. In verse 9, Paul warns, "But you must be careful so that your freedom does not cause others with a weaker conscience to stumble." The danger of causing others to stumble. Paul's concern here is love in action. He's calling the Corinthians and us to think beyond ourselves. It's not just about what we have the freedom to do. It's about how our choices impact the faith and conscience of others. In verse 12, Paul makes a bold statement. And when you sin against other believers by encouraging them to do something they believe is wrong, you are sinning against Christ. This is a serious charge. It's not just about eating or not eating. It's about the potential spiritual harm we could cause to a fellow believer. Paul's conclusion in verse 13 is striking. So if what I eat causes another believer to sin, I will never eat meat again as long as I live, for I don't want to cause another believer to stumble. This is the heart of the matter: love. Paul is willing to give up his own rights and freedoms for the sake of another's spiritual well-being, applying this to our lives today. Now, let's bring this into our context. While we might not be dealing with food sacrificed to idols, the principle remains the same. We all have freedoms in Christ, but how we exercise those freedoms matters. Whether it's the media we consume, the way we spend our money, or the choices we make in our social lives, we must ask ourselves, how will this affect others? Are our actions building others up, or are they causing them to stumble? Are we using our knowledge and freedom in a way that reflects the love of Christ? Paul's message in 1 Corinthians 8 challenges us to think deeply about the impact of our actions. It's a call to put love above all else, Yes, we have knowledge, but that knowledge should lead us to greater love and consideration for others. In today's world, where individual rights and freedoms are often emphasized, this message is countercultural. It's a reminder that, as Christians, we are called to live in a way that serves and protects the spiritual well-being of others. Conclusion. So, as we reflect on 1 Corinthians 8, let's remember that our knowledge and freedom are gifts from God, but they come with responsibility. Let's strive to live in a way that builds up others, that considers the conscience of our brothers and sisters, and that ultimately glorifies God. In every decision, let's ask ourselves, am I acting out of love? Am I building up others? This is the heart of Paul's message, and it's a challenge for all of us to live out our faith with love, humility, and consideration for the impact of our actions on those around us. Thank you for joining us today. May we all seek to live lives that not only reflect the knowledge we have in Christ, but more importantly, the love that He calls us to embody every day.